I'm going to talk about volunteering as a meaningful encounter in a program that I've been working in for the past 7 years, and that will still run for 1 year. It's called Growing Older Together. I will tell you a bit more about it in a minute, but it's one of the most rewarding experiences in my life up to now, because of the fact that we have a program that runs for 8 years, in which you can really change things. And we have been working with a lot of elderly people in the Netherlands, a lot of volunteer organizations, and also with a lot of young people, which makes it a very rewarding experience. I have a question for you. If you look at the first picture on the left for you, who is the lonely person and who is the volunteer? If you think that the person on the left is the lonely person, raise your hand. Is the person on the left, the elderly woman, is that the lonely person? Or do you think it's the person on the right with the finger? Is that the lonely person? Or both? Or none? How can you tell who is the volunteer? If you look at the other thing, people are playing a game, very popular in the Netherlands. It's called Schulen. Who is the volunteer in that picture? Can you tell? Do you have any idea? Is there any volunteer? I have another one. Who is the vulnerable person here, out of the 4? Do you have any idea? Can you tell? Who is helping who here? Are the youngsters helping the elderly person, or is the older person helping the youngsters? Do you know? Can you tell? Exactly. One of the main things that we have learned in this program that we've been doing is that sometimes someone is vulnerable, sometimes someone is a volunteer, sometimes someone is lonely, sometimes all people are lonely, sometimes nobody is lonely. We simply can't tell. We don't know. We don't know who's helping who here. We had a great program in the Netherlands on the Dutch television. The idea of that program was that young people would help lonely elderly people. That program ran for 6 or 7 episodes, and then they wrapped it up. And the main outcome of that program was that all the youngsters said, oh, we learned so much, we were really helped. And the elderly people said, we could share our wisdom, our ideas, that the experiences that we have. Both sides profited equally. Yes, the concept of the program was, all elderly people, they must be lonely, so we asked some young people to help them. The outcome was that they helped each other, and that the young people probably gained more out of the experience than the elderly people. This is the basic principle that we use in our program, in which we are talking, loneliness is a growing problem in the Netherlands, like it is in many parts of the world, especially among the really older people and amongst young people. But we are trying to reframe the way in which we look at those concepts. Because if I would ask any of you, are you lonely? It's a very difficult question to answer. Maybe because you simply don't know, maybe because you don't want to tell, because there's a kind of a taboo around it. So how do you deal with that? So we started reframing everything. This is the program that I was talking about, Growing Older Together. It's a nationwide 8-year program involving 11 nationwide operating volunteer organizations, and we work in about 50 municipalities. So it's a really large-scale program, which is great, and we work with a lot of local partners, obviously, because volunteering is always happening locally, and so you need to team up with the people that are doing it locally. Throughout the program, we have worked with communities of practice and national and other national conventions and coalitions in order to share what we learn. Because the basic principle, and it's interesting that it already was mentioned as by Leila as one of the things that is important in evolving volunteering, is that you need to have an innovative culture. What we have tried from the start in this program to become a learning and development program. So are allowed to make mistakes in the program as long as we learn from it. So we started experiments in many different places, simply trying to find out how can, because that is the goal of the program, how can we grow older together in a healthy and social way, and what part does volunteering play in that mission, in growing older together. And not just volunteering for elderly, but also volunteering by elderly, obviously. Because most, if I understood correctly, here in Slovakia, the people that volunteer a little bit less than average are also elderly people. Am I correct in saying that? Right? In the Netherlands, it's not like that. The people that are in retirement, there is a surge in volunteering which only flattens out after people become 75, 80. Because then, obviously because of health reasons, for example, or mobility reasons, they may be less able to volunteer, but I'll get back to that. So, what we try to focus on is a lot. As you can see, there are 5 different things. I won't mention them all. One of the things that in this part of the program we do a lot is focus on intergenerational contact, so contact between generations. Because we found throughout the program how important it is to connect generations. So again, as Leila already mentioned, it is so important that we have a social infrastructure in which people have a dialogue, understand each other, know of each other. And by focusing on the context between generations, this becomes possible. And I'll have some examples of that. We also have been focusing on elderly with a migration background. As in many countries, in the Netherlands, there are larger groups of immigrants. Many of them came in the 60s, 70s when we needed more workforce. They came, for example, from Turkey, they came from Morocco, they came from our former colonies. And these people are now also in their 80s. But the way in which they are grounded in Dutch society is quite different than from white people, so to say. So we need to take care that we have different types of programs geared towards the needs of those special groups. Because they're often left out, often they have less education, the language may be a problem for those first generation immigrants. So we need to pay attention to that. So we have some themes, and our philosophy, and I think this is the really important one, is that we don't see elderly people as a target group. They are not a target group of a program that we run in which we think of all kinds of interesting things that are good for them. Elderly people are the source of everything that we do. When we started the program, we had the idea, well, we have a basic idea of what is good and how volunteering can work. So we came to the communities and said, well, this is what we want to do. And all the elderly said, did you listen to us? Did you ask us questions? Did you involve us from the start? And no, we didn't do that. So we refocused and said, well, anything that we do starts with talking with the people that are the source of everything that we do afterwards. And in this case, this program is not called for nothing, it's growing older together. So it's focusing on how do we get older in Dutch society. And that means that you have to talk to older people to start with, but not just to older people, because I'm getting older every day as well. I'm 57 now, in a few years' time, maybe I retire, and then what happens? But we also need to talk to youngsters, because youngsters are the ones that are in our aging society. We have a double aging problem. We have our population, I don't know how to say that, is like this. And so there are a few young people and many elderly people, and all these elderly people are getting older healthily, which means that less young people have to take care of more and more elderly people in the end. So we need to talk to young people as well. That's where it starts. Elderly people are the source. And we also said, well, there are a lot of programs that are focusing on new housing arrangements, how the care system is working, so that the more firm parts of what it means to get older. We want to focus on the other part, the social, emotional, and purposeful sides of life. What does it mean to get older? Do you still matter? Do you still count? What matters to you? That's important. The third, is that the third? Yeah, it's the third. The third principle that we use is the only thing that really matters are communities. If we want to fight loneliness in a highly individualized society, which the Netherlands is, then we need to focus on where do people meet, where do we make it easy for them to encounter others. So we need to focus on communities and how to build and strengthen those communities. And that always happens locally, both live and online, so to say nowadays. I was quite amazed at how many people do online volunteering here in Slovakia. It's less in the Netherlands, I can tell you. So you're way ahead of us, but it's getting into the same direction also among the young elderly people. And there are still generations that really don't know how the internet works, but it's diminishing fast. My mother, she is 83 now. She's better at the iPad than I am. It's as easy as that. So that's the third one. The fourth one is we take a very positive approach. More often programs take a gap approach or a problem approach. How do we get people to all those people are so lonely and they can't do anything anymore and they don't matter anymore. Oh, this is a real problem. We are saying, what can you do? What do you want to do? Where do you see an opportunity? And it means that when you ask, and when we go to the elderly, we're not asking them what is wrong in your life, but what is right in your life. What do you still want to do? Where do you see opportunities? And this helps a lot in getting different types of conversations, opening up possibilities. And finally, and for today, very important, we think and we see that volunteering, especially among elderly, it has a double meaning, so to say. It gives meaning to people's lives, and you give meaning to others by doing volunteering. So it gives meaning and it is meaningful in itself. So you contribute to society, which then again gives meaning to you, and it helps you fulfill your life even at a later age. And the combination has proven to be very valuable. I don't know whether you recognize this in your programs that you do, but we really stressed out the extreme importance of volunteering, especially at an older age. Because we see that it's really helpful for people. It's as easy as that. So, one of the things I was talking about is that it is important to look at how to build up or strengthen communities. And we call that developing meaningful encounters, because it all starts with this first meeting. And what helps you to get out and drink coffee with people you don't know, or as they are called in literature, known strangers. So you know who the neighbors are, but you hardly ever speak to them anymore. Or you go to the supermarket and there is this nice lady behind the counter, but you don't really dare to speak to her. How do you create these small type encounters which then can become meaningful? And again, as I said, the needs and wishes and ideas of elderly people are the starting point. And what we really have learned, and you must have similar tools here, is make it as easy as possible. Make it as easy as possible. And what helps? There are a few things in life that everybody likes. Food, movement, health, sports, games, etc. Choose one that you fit. Use things that people do anyway, or where they go to anyway, and then start easy, simple conversations. I'm particularly proud of what we call the methodology. It's called the pink teapot methodology. We're very proud of that one. It was invented by one of our team members in the north of the country, and she said, well, if I want to speak to elderly people, how do I do that? And she thought, well, I'll buy a pink teapot, I fill it with tea, and I'm going with something like this, stand on the street in front of a large supermarket and invite people to have a cup of tea with me. That's it. That's all I'm doing. I'm not asking them for anything. I do not ask them to volunteer or how their lives are. I'm simply asking them, do you want to have a cup of tea? Some people walked by like this. Some people didn't even look. But obviously there are always some people who are then curious and say, well, okay, what are you doing here? And well, she simply said, well, do you want to have a cup of tea? And who are you? What are you doing today? Did you buy some groceries? And that's where a conversation starts. And in that conversation, if you ask the right type of empowering questions, people may say something about themselves. They may share some of their hopes, of their ideas, of their dreams, maybe of their sorrows, of what worries them. And then, at the end of the conversation, she would ask them, would you like to have another conversation in a few weeks' time, maybe with some other people? Some said, no, this was fine, okay. Some said, I'll have to think about it. Okay, can I reach you? Do you have an email address or a telephone number? And some said, wow, that would be interesting. So it's very low-key, very small, and in the end, what it led to is that by having these pink teapot conversations, as you can see there, she was able to form groups of elderly people who now come regularly together in a community center to have conversations with each other. They started activities, they started a walking group because they wanted to stay fit. Some started cooking for each other. It can start very small. It takes time. That's a very important one. If you have to have results within a month, then it doesn't work. If you have to have results, if you have the time to build up these small-scale communities, then you can be surprised what people want to do. And you start where the energy is. And we developed another thing which is called samenspel, playing together. This was by one of the organizations who is really good at getting young people to volunteer. And we asked them, well, if you want to make the generations connect, how do you do that? So they developed a card game with, 30, 40 questions, which could be played in schools or in retirement homes, or just, well, we could have played it here if it was in Slovak. And the questions on those cards are very, very different. There are easy questions, so to say. What is your favorite meal? What kind of sport do you like? There are also somewhat harder questions. What is really important to you in life? What do you want to achieve in life? There are different sets of questions. And obviously you start again with the easy question. And an easy question, and this is one of the key takeaways, I think, can lead to profound conversations, to a profound dialogue. We used this card set at a national conference last year. And we asked the audience to start playing with the cards. We all gave them a set. And start with the question, what is your favorite meal? And within minutes, people were sharing stories about their grandmother and that she made pancakes on a Sunday and that they always remembered that and that they now did it for their grandchildren. And okay, there are real values attached to that. Maybe a next question will be, what is then important for you now? What do you want to share with others from what you have learned in your life? And for smaller children, for school children, it can be a memory that is attached to something that they did with their parents or that they did at school. So within a few minutes, again, you get people to talk about things that really matter to them by asking them simple questions. And that's what we did here. And what we also learned in this process is please don't ask people about volunteering or to become a volunteer. That's not something that you start with because it's really off-putting for people. And what we even learned is that we don't use the term volunteering anymore. In the Netherlands it's called vrijwilligerswerk, which is volunteer work basically. So there's work attached to that, which is not a good thing, but hey, we're stuck with it. But we stopped asking people about volunteering because volunteering has a special connotation for many people. For young people, it means boring, grey, old. For older people, it means, oh, this is really something that I need to put all my effort into, and it's really hard, and I have to have the time for it, and oh, I don't want to do it anymore. We actually did research among people from 80 years and older, and they associated volunteering with firm, long-term, really putting all your effort and energy into that, and they said, we don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to volunteer. But then we asked them, is there anything that you would like to do in your community, for your neighbors, for the youngsters? And I said, of course, no problem. If I have to read every now and then, or if I have to push a wheel chart for someone else, or I have to do some groceries if I'm going anyway, of course I want to do that. And the same goes for youngsters who do not want to volunteer, but who want to make a contribution to society. There's another problem to that. As we saw here, the number of young people volunteering is on the rise. The same in the Netherlands, the same in Europe, the same in Slovakia. So people do want to matter. But you have to reframe the language that you use in order to really make the link with how they see their lives. And we found that it is equally important for elderly people as for young people. So that's why we stopped using the term volunteering. Which sometimes is a problem, obviously, because you can't say, well, what do you do in your life? That's a bit too broad. So you have to make it sure that what are you doing in the community, what do you do for free, what do you do for others. So you have to reframe for every single group that you're working with, you have to reframe the question, basically. What helped in this positive way of looking at volunteering is that we also said, well, we have to look at talents. What kind of talents and competencies do people have, or do they want to share with others? And for that we developed a talent game in which elderly people, we had a talent bus going around Rotterdam, in which we asked elderly people to join us again in a conversation, and then with, as you can see, visual cards. So there are words, but there are also all kinds of pictures, which is important for people who don't speak the language that well. So what is important to you? What do you want to do? What skills do you have? What skills do you still want to share with others? All those types of questions we asked people. And not, again, because we had a volunteer offer directly for them, but by engaging in that conversation, people are awakened. Oh, I do have a lot of talents, I do have a lot of competencies, and maybe some people can make use of that. And I remember one conversation with an 80-year-old man who was a bit hesitant. Well, what is this? Do I need to participate in something? No, you don't. Simply have a cup of coffee, come and sit, and we'll have a conversation. And he always thought of himself, well, I'm 80 now, I'm redundant, I don't matter anymore, my skills are not needed anymore. And through playing part of that game, he discovered how important sharing things with young people, educating other people were to him. He was an old teacher, but he thought, well, I don't have to teach anything anymore. And he rediscovered the talent that he always had. And then was well, and he said, well, but then how can I use that talent now? Well, there are all kinds of ways in which you can share that talent. And then the question about volunteering appears. Maybe you can do it in a school. Maybe you can do it in a community center. Maybe you can do it, etc., etc. And so that's what we learned. We have to maybe reconnect people, especially elderly people, to what already was important to them, but what they have forgotten, or what they think is not important to society or to others anymore. And this is a deeply ingrained notion that people have, because I don't know how this is in Slovakia, and you will have to tell me, but what we see in the Netherlands is that there's a long-standing frame that if you're old, you don't matter anymore. That's not true, obviously, but once everybody in society says that, and politicians say it, and the welfare system is built like that, and that after you're retired, you're no longer of use. You're a burden to society, if I put it very bluntly. If that is a notion that people have, then they will incorporate that, and they will act like it. So a lot of elderly people, although they have all kinds of talents and ideas, they simply don't think that they matter anymore. And that's why we started working on this program. Apart from these small-scale encounters, we also found the extreme importance of small-scale meeting places. In the Netherlands, a lot of community centers, libraries, small pubs, hairdressers, they have disappeared, especially in the rural areas, but all over the Netherlands you see that there are less and less public places where people normally come and meet each other. And in a supermarket, you obviously come there to do your groceries, but you don't meet you don't meet nobody no more. Because everything is, I've done some groceries here in Bratislava, not understanding the language, everything is with all kinds of machines, right? Luckily, I made a mistake, so someone had to come and help me, so I had to have a conversation. One of the supermarkets in the Netherlands nowadays has a special counter, which is called the talking counter, where people who have done their groceries can simply have a cup of coffee, and there's an employee with whom you can talk. It's strange that this is necessary, right? That we need to reinvent a conversation with other people. And that's why we say, well, we need to have all kinds of small-scale meeting places, and they can be anywhere. They can still be in existing community centers. They can be in libraries that are still there. And the libraries have received, luckily, a lot of funding to become community centers, community organizing centers, again in the Netherlands, which they once were. And then they were all skipped. But that's how it goes. And we see that it is important to do these things bottom up. Again, starting with the people themselves, to make it as collective as possible, so not one person that is doing it, but a group of persons that is based on equality and on reciprocity. So it's not you are the volunteer and I am the participant. No, today I am the volunteer, but tomorrow I can be the participant. And the other way around. You can be whoever you want to be in these small-scale meeting places. And we've called, in the north of the Netherlands, there is a highly successful project where we started with 3 so-called neighborhood centers. There are now 30, 4 years later, and they're all run by volunteers, elderly people from the communities themselves. And why does it work? Again, because of those principles, and because they are hugely different in how they operate. Some of them are, well, more or less professional, in the sense that they come together. There's a coordinator. There are real volunteers. There are part-time volunteers, and there are participants. So, and everybody thinks that's okay. And in other places, people say, "Well, we should come together next Wednesday." And has anybody an idea what we can do? Well, maybe we can have a meal together, or we can play games together. What happens is that in all these places, it's all volunteering. It's completely volunteer run, and there only in the background there are professionals from the welfare organization. But all these 30 community centers, they're all, or neighborhood centers I should call them, they're all locally run by volunteers. Most of them by elderly volunteers, some in mixed groups nowadays. There's a special group which is called the Philosophy Neighborhood Center, where people want to talk about philosophy and books. There's also one for pink elderly, people with a gay background. It all came up naturally in the communities. And that is what makes it so highly successful. We interviewed the professionals of the welfare organization and asked them, well, what do you do? And they said, well, we try to do as little as possible. They literally, I don't know whether this is an English expression, but they said, we sit on our hands. And only when people come to us and say, well, can you help us with, or we don't know how, then they step into action. And this is what we mean with make it really bottom up and make it really collective. And we see that it works. In other parts of the Netherlands, I don't know, I'm just talking, I don't see any signs anywhere, so the signs are gone. I can go on forever. Yes, finally. Another example, and you see a Dutch word here, which is called voorzorgcirkel. It's a pre-care circle, which means that people in the south of the Netherlands, most of the times, they start forming groups because they see that our care system is under high pressure. There's not enough place for everybody once you have health problems, for example. What if we can prevent that people get into the hard healthcare, for example, and that is simply by looking after each other. There's a lot that people can do for each other by simply looking after each other. Which means, and there are again huge differences, there are these preventive care circles that are basically people that have installed a park bench and come together and ask for each other, how are you doing today? That's it. There are also preventive care circles where there is a system with someone from the municipality who acts as a go-between between the inhabitants and the municipality or the welfare or the care organizations, and where they really have a system in which if people need to go to the hospital, then there's someone who takes care of that. If someone needs to go to a doctor, someone takes care of that. It can be what is needed in that community and what people feel comfortable with. What the good news is that we see an enormous growth in all these types of small-scale communities of elderly people taking the lead in taking care of each other. And again, who is the volunteer? Who is the vulnerable person? Who is lonely here? We don't know. And these roles change all the time. Because I can have a problem now, but once that problem is solved, I will be able to help someone else again. This reciprocal way of thinking is extremely important. And what we are doing now in the program, well, maybe there should be an international variant, is that we are collecting all these stories, all these methodologies, in order to share them again with others and to collectively learn how you can work in different places. Now, this has been up to now a very positive story, right? I'm very happy to be part of the team that is doing this, and we really think that we have booked a lot of success in different places. But it's not all going well. There are a few thresholds that we still need to overcome, and I want to share those thresholds with you as well. First of all, there is a growing pressure on elderly to contribute, as it is called, which simply means we should work longer, harder, we should work in paid work, volunteer, and take care of informal care, all at the same time in the same 24 hours, which is obviously not possible, which means that if you have to work longer, because of a shrinking workforce and also because of the fact that our retirement schemes are plummeting, so people simply need the money, so they start working longer. And if you also have to take care of your family members that are also getting older and getting sick, then the part that suffers is volunteering, because volunteering is in the end a free choice. Whereas informal care is something that happens in your life to which you can't really say no. If your partner becomes ill, you can't say, well, take care of yourself, I'm going to do other things. Or most people don't do that. And if you need the money, or if the government more or less forces you to work longer, so then volunteering is the first thing that will suffer in this respect. And that is becoming a really important thing. As you saw in the figures that Leila presented, the Netherlands has an enormously high number of volunteers, which is a good thing, but we also see the pressure. And this pressure is coming among young people who volunteer in different ways, episodical volunteering, one-off volunteering, online volunteering, but we also see it at the top end among elderly people who simply have to manage their time in a different way. So that's an important one. This, of course, is linked to all kinds of cutbacks in care and welfare. As in many parts of the world, also in the Netherlands, well, we don't have a government at the moment, which is good news. But once we have a government, they will almost always start cutbacks on care and welfare, because in one way or the other, it's not the most important sector in government. We try to change that, but up to now it hasn't worked, which means that more and more is asked again of people themselves to take care of each other. And this is not a problem in the sense that nobody wants to do it, but there is, in the end, a limit to what people can do. And if you break down the professional care and welfare system, then somewhere something goes wrong, right? Because people will need to be able to get to a doctor or to a hospital, and this is now really under pressure. A totally different one, which is also, I'm very curious to know from you whether you recognize that, is that among professionals, we often see what we call a savior syndrome. So some elderly have their own initiative, they want to do something, and then the professional says, I'll do it for you, I'll help you. Like a kind of a Superman taking over and rescuing humanity. And this is beautiful. It's beautiful that people want to help others and be there for others, but it means that all reciprocity, ownership is lost in the process. Because then people say, well, I'll sit back and relax and let you do it. And that's not what we want. So dealing with savior syndrome among professionals is often an important one, and that's exactly why I mentioned the example of the welfare professionals in the north of the Netherlands who said, well, we do nothing until we are asked. So they have overcome the savior syndrome. Then this story is also about elderly in the Netherlands, but obviously one elderly person is not the same as another elderly person. So what we see is that it is that there are all kinds of exclusion mechanisms built into society. Some people get easier access to volunteering, easier access to welfare, easier access to care systems. And that means that we need to pay extra attention to these other groups that are left out because of socioeconomic status, of gender, of ethnicity, and it's hard. We have quite a brilliant student who has done a master's thesis by doing a qualitative research among people with a Turkish and Moroccan background, and she wanted really to come into contact with them. She is Dutch, doesn't speak the languages of Turkish and Moroccan, and she really wanted to have interviews with them. It was really difficult for her to get into a real conversation. And I asked her, because she wrote I read it in the plane, a very good thesis, but I asked her to reflect as well on what does it mean if it's for you who has the real opportunity to get into touch with these people with these backgrounds. If you have that kind of trouble, what does that mean for other people who do not have the time, who do not have the intent to break through? This is a really important one. It means that in any research in the Netherlands, we simply don't know how many people with a migration background volunteer. We simply don't know, because they won't be part of normal questionnaires, because they won't fill them out, they won't complete them. If you need this kind of a qualitative research in all kinds of places, that's way too expensive, as you already mentioned. So we simply don't know what type of volunteering is taking place, except anecdotal, obviously, because we do know something. So this is if we want to really, for all the elderly people in the Netherlands, we want to be relevant, there are some barriers that we need to overcome. Finally, a final threshold that we came across. One of the things that we really try to boost is cooperation between formal and informal organizations, because we need them both. we need the care organizations, we need the welfare organizations, we need the municipality, we need the volunteer organizations, the volunteer centers, we need them all to collaborate locally, regionally sometimes, in order to make it possible for as many elderly people to matter and to participate. But I don't know how it is here, but in the Netherlands we have different systems of financing, of reporting for the formal sector and for the informal sector. The formal sector gets more money, more funding, has more opportunities than the informal sector. Recognizable, right? Which means that in the end it is quite difficult at the municipal level to get all parties to sit around the table and work really from the same mission and from the same ideals. It's not about the people. Most of the people that are around the table, they see it, but the systems and the organizations, they may have different values, different ambitions, which makes it very hard to get them all to work together. And one of the things that we really started in the program is a community of practice around collaboration, informal, formal, and we're still learning. We've been doing that now for 4 years, and there are some successes, but we see that it takes a long time, and that it can plummet like this once financing is changed or gone. So this is a really important one because we do need that long-term cooperation. So that's something that we will be investing in, and hopefully that's also something that you recognize, that you need other parties to really come to a societal change, in which, in our case, the elderly really matter, are taken care of and take care of themselves through all kinds of partnerships. Finally, is that okay? I'm still good. Still good to go. I have some conclusions, and they come forward out of this presentation, and I hope to engage you because there will be time for questions. And if you have some questions or ideas or want to share experiences, please do. My basic conclusions after 7 years of this program is that empowerment begins with asking people what is meaningful to them and what matters to them, and how they want to matter to others. This is the basic principle of our program. Simply ask, in this case, elderly people, what is meaningful to you, what matters to you, and how do you want to matter to others. And not everybody has an instant answer to that, obviously, and that's why you need to start with games or with conversations or with food or with sports in order to engage people in the first place, and then start having these type of conversations. Participation then starts with small-scale, bottom-up and close-by encounters in safe environments. The safety I haven't mentioned yet, but it's a very important one. People need to feel safe in an environment, and one of the ways in which you can get people to do that is by involving them from the start. Because then they decide what is a safe space for them. So these safe environments are important, and it doesn't matter what you do, but that you're there. There are many examples in these neighborhood centers where people simply come and have a cup of coffee. That's fine. If you want to come a week later and have again only a cup of coffee, that's fine. If the next week you say, well, maybe I can make the coffee this time, that's okay. So any way in which people want to be involved is okay. And at some point, someone, a coordinator, a welfare person, may ask the question, is there something else that you would like to do? Because sometimes it helps that you start asking the question, because not everybody finds it in her or himself to see the talents or the competencies that they can bring. So then you can maybe invite people to do something else. And if they say no, that's fine. And so this is the second important one. And the third one is, and this is what I want to end with because we're here talking about volunteering. Volunteering by and for elderly people is a very easy and very effective way to contribute to meaningful participation. We all know this. I don't even think I have to explain this to you because it's your daily work. But volunteering is so extremely easy and close by that we often forget that we have a very important and nice offer for people. And sometimes we make it too difficult. And we have all kinds of regulations and rules and then laws about volunteering, and there are all kinds of forms that you need to fill out. And no, volunteering is as easy as asking someone, hey, I need a hand, can you help me? That's volunteering. That's where volunteering starts. That's not where it ends, obviously. Alberta was talking about the importance of long-term volunteering. In my view, long-term volunteering among elderly people doesn't mean that they do the same job for many years, but that they are in one way involved in volunteering activities. And these can change. They can do a lot now, not in the coming 3 months, then start doing something again once they are fit again or once they feel like it. But their engagement as a volunteer stays the same. I think it is important to make a difference between the way people engage with volunteering and whether or not they actually volunteer. And what you invest in with young people and with elderly people is to keep their engagement in volunteering alive. And that is by validating them, looking for their talents, etc. All the things that we know we need to do. We had a great conversation there in which people said, well, we need to stay in touch with volunteers, we need to appreciate them, we need to validate them. Exactly. That goes for any volunteer, that goes thereby also for older volunteers. I think this is it, what I wanted to share with you. If you want to have contact with me, that's possible. There is a website which is in Dutch with a very small English portion. Maybe we can translate it after the program has ended. If you want to know more of what I'm doing, that's also fine. I always like to get into conversations with all kinds of people working with volunteers. Thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions or remarks, we have some minutes left.
Hi, thank you so much for such an interesting, inspiring lecture. I'm not sure if I have a question, maybe rather a comment, an appreciated comment.